No success has ever come from the top. It is always from the bottom up.
Well, I take it as an issue there, but here there's a big issue with illiteracy, right? And I think it stunts your thinking capabilities within our society, and it kind of minimizes your exposure to ideas. So
true.
Do you think illiteracy kind of fuels low self-esteem amongst men?
Oh, definitely. And I would actually I think the advice that I would give for that would be similar to many other things that we equate with being failures as men. When we cannot provide, when I don't have money, when I cannot impress, when I don't have a lot of material possessions, when I don't have a job, when I don't have a title, when I'm not known, when I stutter when I speak, when I shiver when I stand up in a congregation or in a group. All of these things make us fall so deeply. We feel we are literally failures. And I think literacy is definitely one of those examples of that. And it's very interesting and very important that you mention it, because it's maybe one aspect of manhood that those of us who know how to read and write take for granted. So we might not even be sensitive enough to, we just say, no, just everybody in this group, write down 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we fail to realize that we've actually already pushed somebody over the margin, and some will excuse themselves and say that I need to go to the bathroom, but they actually want to leave, so they're not going to come back to the group. So I think what my advice on issues like this, brothers, we need to take some responsibility as African men. I'm inspired by many African women who have done that. They have said, we are tired of oppression, we're tired of complaining, we're tired of sitting down and waiting for opportunities. We need to come together as sisters and do something about it. And yes, there can be problematic aspects of how women have come to certain notions about excluding themselves and thinking, around issues of gender and sexuality and things like that. But that aside, I'm very inspired by so many sisters who have done that. And I think having the experience for more than 10 years of creating those platforms for and together with African men, in which we can have conversations like that, in which we can create workshops and seminars and learning journeys for those who struggle with different things. One thing I have learned very strongly about us as African men is that, as much as we don't want to admit it, we examine each other. And when I find that this brother is good at 1, 2, 3, I quickly make I reason in my mind and think of myself either as lower than, more than, less than this brother. So we look to each other a lot for, let me call it, quiet guidance. Meaning, I'm not asking for guidance. I'm not saying I want to do what you do, but I'm peeping you from the eye, and I hear the way you talk, and I say, whoa, I wish I could talk like that. This brother has got his family together. He's got 10 kids. What? I'm not even a man. I don't even have one child. Like, we do a lot of those measuring stuff. So we don't have to wait for men to come out and say, I need a course on literacy. I want to understand, how do I approach a woman without offending her? I have an issue with anger. We don't have to wait. We know that these are some of the things that we struggle with as African men. So when we can come together, it can be a very organized form, but it can also be just a bunch of cousins, a bunch of men living in a similar area, and say, you know what, every Saturday, why don't we meet? We have a talk, but then we have a meal after, for instance. These are ways that we can start to weave back our confidence. We can start to rebuild some of the things that we have lost as African men.
Oh, yeah. So you have a next question?
I have one last one. Go ahead. Then I'll do my last one.
And I find that funny. I find that funny because I was just telling somebody recently that a major part of the strategy and being proactive as it comes to Pan-Africanism or anything related to African is being patient. I know it sounds kind of contradictory because majority of people think of patient as being passive, but not. When I say patient, it's not about being passive. It's about being strategic, knowing the timing, when to move, how to do everything, not get frustrated. And I feel like a lot of people don't have patience. So it impedes with the mission. So they start and they tend to not finish. And then that kind of conflicts with the whole power struggle that we're trying to reach,
True. I completely agree. And I would just add very quickly to that, that I think we have many elements of fear ingrained into our being, so much that we don't identify them as fear. For instance, I always say, I don't see procrastination amongst, so there's this notion that as African men, we procrastinate, we talk a good game, we say we're going to do this next year, we're still not doing anything 2 years down the line, and that means we are just lazy. I think it's fear, because if I'm going to put myself out in the world, that tells me that I'm nobody, I'm just a little boy, that's what the world tells me. And when I say, no, I'm an African man, the world laughs at me. What do you mean you're a man? What do you own? How much money do you have? And now my voice is becoming smaller and smaller because I don't have that to show for myself. So to put yourself out and say you are an African man, then the world puts you back in your corner. And to actually say, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, there's an element of fear. And a lot of brothers say this when you ask them, what is your biggest fear? The fear of failure. And that means we already have experienced ourselves as failures.
Well, let me hear you say,